everyone. Welcome once again to The Blueprints. This is Canada's Conservative Podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Schmale, Member of Parliament for Haliburton Kawartha Lakes, with new content for you every single Tuesday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time, even throughout the summer. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Tell your friends, download it on platforms like CastBox, Google Play, and Spotify. You name it, it is out there. On today's show, we are talking about the economy, tariffs, and agriculture in Canada. To do that, we bring on one of the experts in the field. In our caucus, Dave Epp, the Member of Parliament for Chatham, Kent, Leamington, and a member of the Ag Committee. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Jamie, for inviting me. I appreciate the honor.
Well, I only invited you because you said you'd wear a tie, so I appreciate you doing that.
I'm bringing up the average.
You are, yes.
There we go.
Yes, you're making me look bad, so probably your last episode on the show. All kidding aside, we're looking at some pretty incredible numbers. We've got tariffs coming at us left, right, and center, changing every day, little predictability. We're seeing, some shaky economic times potentially ahead. People are waiting on buying certain things, a whole bunch of other moving parts. But also you have a report that the government put out recently that shows that if we continue on this current liberal path, things are going to get pretty dark. Let's put up the screenshot here. Yeah, we're talking about dystopia where people are super wealthy, and then those middle class, what's left of it, and kind of everyone else hunting for their food. What a mess.
What a mess. You're absolutely right. Food, right? Every government wants to feed their population. And so over time, our economies with our American friends to the south have become very integrated in a number of sectors, auto being one, and obviously our food distribution system. And so if you go think back to when President Trump first put on tariffs and actually ignored the Kuzma deal, the effect just for that 72-hour period that the tariffs were in place, I can give you some specific instances. I know the greenhouse sector is a large component of my own riding. Mm-hmm. $7 million is what our producers paid in my riding in that 72-hour period.
Wow.
I had a hog producer that was forced, under contract and shipped 7 truckloads of pigs at $11,000, unbudgeted, obviously, on tariff fees. So $77,000 just in that one time period.
And somebody has to eat that.
Somebody is going to have to eat that in the value of, exactly. From a Western Canadian perspective, feedlots, in that one short period, one feedlot paid $3 million in tariffs. So, depending on the size and the scope of the operation, mm-hmm. the impact of tariffs onto the food value system is huge. And, it's not beyond the realm of reason that, it is scary to see headlines like that.
Yeah.
That could be a possibility. That's not what any government wants.
And it's the government reports putting this out. Like, it's not some, right-wing, think tank or something like that. It is its own government bureaucrat. Let's cue up cut one, because this shows you, or the viewers and the listeners, a bit about your area and what the greenhouses actually mean and the real dollars. Because I don't think people recognize the fact that your area is talking in the billions of dollars, like B.
Correct.
Yeah.
The greenhouse industry in my area is the second largest concentration of greenhouses in the world.
And most of these greenhouses need an exemption from the carbon tax. People forget that too.
Right. So they had a carve out from the carbon tax, the 2015 Act, where they only paid 20%. Mm-hmm. Right now, it has been lifted, but there's great worry as to where they might face it again if the Prime Minister does not back away from his industrial carbon tax. Where is he going to put that in the cost of energy, the cost of inputs that go not only to the greenhouse industry, but also to the field sector as well?
Which skyrockets the price of fuel, because someone has to, I hate using the term, eat the cost, right? It goes somewhere.
Fuel, crop protection products, a whole host of, we can get into steel and aluminum. People don't think of that immediately when it comes to food, but the steel and aluminum tariffs have a huge impact on food production.
All right, play cut one.
This is Ontario's Greenhouse Alley. The region is home to the largest concentration of greenhouses in all of North America. Nearly 650 million kilograms of tomatoes, cucumbers and peppers are grown here each year in an industry worth billions of dollars. Much of it is exported to the US.
We rely on the US market to export over 85% of our product. As much as we export into the US agricultural products, fresh fruit and vegetables, we rely heavily on the US to supplement Canada. Are these tariff wars and threats of tariffs and bringing domestic production back to the US a precursor to those negotiations between US, Mexico, and Canada, which could ultimately impact our members?
Yeah, these are jobs at stake, right? It's not only the price of food domestically, but also a lot of jobs and economic health of your entire region.
$1 billion of greenhouse product leaves my riding every year, headed for the U.S. Richard mentioned it was 85% of the industry that has grown in our region for some very specific reasons. Initially, because they were growing in sandy soil way back in the 40s, but the cluster of knowledge, all of the services that have developed there, and they're putting a superior product onto the shelf. And so, I mean, it is willingly being bought by American consumers. But that has grown under a tariff-free environment.
Right.
So that is the risk, that is the fear that he speaks of.
Now, are you getting any feedback from the people on the ground? I know you mentioned, potentially what the government will do with the industrial carbon tax. Do they get hit with it? But also, what are they saying to you about tariffs and potential tariffs, more tariffs? Like, what's the bottom line here?
There's a number of fears and concerns because, quite frankly, we don't know what the government is talking about. We talk about pharmaceuticals trade. Well, you don't think of that necessarily when it comes to agriculture, and yet it's closely related to the whole crop protection product field. Will those products continue to move tariff-free across the border? Or are they facing a 35% tariff as they are now? Steel and aluminum, you don't think of that when eating processed vegetables. That's the more specific background I come from. But Quebec aluminum is exported to the U.S. where it incurs an import tariff. It's made into cans.
Cans, yeah.
Right? And then for a short period of time, Canada counter-tariffed our aluminum, which initially you thought, well, that's fair. But now our processors of vegetable products are facing a tariff. When they bring in aluminum cans, because Canada no longer has any can manufacturing left in Canada, it's a part of the whole discussion of why so much manufacturing in the last decade has left our country. So now our processors are facing a can of pasta sauce that could be made from Ohio tomatoes, where the Ohio manufacturers are facing a 25% tariff of incoming Quebec aluminum, but they were not facing the tariff on the cans that our domestic manufacturers and processors were.
Yep.
That fortunately was lifted because it was hurting our own people. Tariffs in the end hurt your own population.
Nobody wins a trade war.
That's
I think
right.
that's the bottom line. Nobody wins a trade war. And I heard it from my craft brewers, right?
Exactly.
The
That's
cans
a similar industry.
were going up.
Yes.
And again, they're facing the same problem like everyone. You can only raise prices so much before it exceeds what the market is willing to pay for a certain product or service.
People are wondering why, particularly in the US, they haven't seen the impact of the shelf yet. Businessmen, people, by their nature, will lose will lose profit before they lose market share because it's so hard to get market share back.
Yeah, once you get that loyalty.
But eventually the cost, because the supply chain has been eating a lot of this uncertainty, but eventually, the chickens come home to roost, to continue to use agricultural metaphors, and the cost, the consumers will face them. There's no other way about it. It comes over time. You're starting to see some early data showing in the U.S.
And we've seen different things, like the prices have gone up for sure. It's insane right now. But even we had shrinkflation there, and I still see the packs of bacon getting smaller. Even deodorant, and the cans or the plastic containers are getting smaller. Like everything is changing very quickly in this rapidly developing
as
world
the supply chain tries to adapt, and in particular, and not just the agri-food supply chain, but all business supply chain. Business hates uncertainty, and that's what we're living in, is in a climate of business uncertainty. And that's the pressure on this government. You and I just came through an election, right, where the promise was, I will bring certainty, I will bring resolution. That's not what we're seeing.
Well, let's cue up cut 2, because I think that speaks to our next clip. Let's play cut 2.
We're in a definitively weakened position today than we were April 28th or August 1st. We have more tariffs, to your point, Katie, than we did since the last election. We have that new copper tariff. And based on the ambassador's comments, based on the prime minister's comments, it doesn't seem to me that we are necessarily further along in the renegotiation of that deal. So this is where the prime minister is going to run into a challenge. He was the one that laid out for Canadians during the election campaign that he would get a deal done and that this was a top priority. Now we are being told to be patient and that we can't take a bad deal. And I don't know how it can be both the greatest economic crisis of our lifetime, as the prime minister has claimed, but also simultaneously that patience is a virtue.
Now, what Kate Harrison was talking about there, also highlighted the stark differences during the last election campaign on what we were promising and what the Liberals were promising. The Liberals were, let's stand up to Trump, right? Let's
elbows up,
stand up to Trump. Not sure how that's going to happen because Justin Trudeau and 10 years of Liberal rule weakened us so much. Our plan was to build Canada so we are as strong as possible domestically, accessing external markets in terms of Europe and Asia, building it that way and standing up as a powerhouse. Not we're trying to do the Mark Carney, we're in a weakened position, not actually growing our economy in any sort of way other than government jobs. And what position are you negotiating from?
Exactly. The U.S., because of proximity, because of geography, will always be our number one trading partner. But the reality is, just as you've said, we have to build those relationships around the world to give us leverage in that relationship. The most powerful word in the English language is no. BATNA, I don't know if you've heard the term, but in prior lives, I had the opportunity to do a lot of negotiating. BATNA is an acronym that stands for your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. So what is Prime Minister Carney's BATNA right now? He went into the election saying it's elbows up, right? But we've seen post-election is more of the chicken dance, right? Elbows up, elbows down, elbows up, elbows down. And maybe there is a master plan at play here. I don't see it. Maybe you do.
I don't know. Well, there's a headline the other day. I should have cut it for this show about the Mexican president now saying that they don't necessarily need a bilateral with Canada, but the United States is making deals with the European Union and others. Like, this is moving very fast, and probably by the time this program airs, it will change. But at the same time, Canada's not getting any stronger. And I think that was the key message. And look at the last 10 years when world leaders came to Canada's doorstep saying, we need your oil and natural gas, and Justin Trudeau just kind of shooed them away. No business plan. Well, my goodness, if we had those deals in place and we were exporting, how much stronger would we be? How much more powerful would our dollar be right now? And I think at that point, we can then negotiate from that position of strength.
Agriculture has been one of the most innovative sectors of our economy. The growth in yield, in productivity, and environmental stewardship has blown away the advancements in many other sectors until the last decade that you just mentioned. Our agricultural growth rates have slowed dramatically. And that is in part to some externalities, but it is also in part to our own regulatory regimes that have stifled a lot of the innovation here. Our international reputation is solid. I mean, Canadian food is known as being safe around the world, but the processes that have led to that reputation have slowed so dramatically that we're actually now falling behind other jurisdictions. We are not keeping up. And I'll come to an area that's a bit sensitive crop protection products. We lag, even the European Union, which operates under the precautionary principle in approving new products. Well, some might say, well, we're protecting the consumer because we're keeping harmful chemicals out of the new system. Actually, the innovative technologies that are coming to market are more targeted, more environmentally benign than the products that they come onto the market to replace. And you would think that it would be in the consumers, the governments, and our society's best interest to bring those new innovations to market as quickly as possible, not as slow. And it's that focus that really needs to come to our regulatory systems, particularly in agriculture, to encourage and continue the growth that we had until this past decade.
But it also highlights an earlier point you made about our regulatory environment. That's why we can't build a pipeline east to west. Right. We aren't building things like we used to. Things aren't moving as fast as it needs to be, especially at the pace of business. Government doesn't move that fast, nor has it really ever. But if you're getting up at 5 a.m. or earlier, breaking your back all day and barely eking out a living, it's hard to get more young people into the agriculture sector, right? Like, if you are it's more lucrative to be in the regulatory environment, right? Be an inspector or something like that, rather than actually doing the job. I think we've got a problem.
There was a survey that Farm Credit Canada put out a while ago that identified the risks that farmers face. That actually asked them the question, what is the number one risk you fear? Is it the markets that are uncertain? Obviously, is it the weather? And do you know what came back?
Government?
The number one concern was government regulation, speed of government regulation, amount of government regulation, government policy.
Yeah, government
That
policy.
became their number one concern when they valued their businesses, when their kids thought about whether getting into it, or whether young people outside of family farms are looking at it. It's the uncertainty around what shackles will be put upon my operation if I go down this route.
Because a lot of the new rules that come into place, a lot of them are done through the departmental process that don't need legislative approval, right? And we often find out about it, like
After
most
the fact.
people, right after the fact that the department already implemented it, and the people on the ground are going, what the heck is this? They're calling our office, and we're going, wow, okay, we never heard of this before. And it's done behind the scenes. It's done with the power of the bureaucracy, nothing to do with the legislative process.
And this is not an anti-regulation rant.
No, it's
Regulations
not
are
at all.
necessary.
Absolutely.
But they have to be responsive.
Correct.
And what is often missing is that economic lens, not to take away from a food safety lens or an environmental
You
safety
can have
lens.
both.
Exactly, walk and chew gum. And particularly agriculture has been very, very good at that in the volatility of markets. I mean, the externalities that agriculture faces causes governments around the world to interfere in agriculture. We talk about a utopian system where we would want agriculture to be in a free market. The reality is structures, regulate, however you want to put it in agriculture markets exist around the world. And I always talked about it that there's three elements that determined how an ag market best worked. It was the complexity of the biology. You take a dairy herd, you take a vineyard, you take a greenhouse operation like we saw those clips, the complexity of that biology determined how much safeguards there had to be, when going to the market. Obviously, it's the ratio of buyers and sellers. We've talked about, we've had hearings here on the Hill with the oligopolies that the supermarkets have, right? We talk about the grocery code of conduct and things like that. So buyers and sellers have roughly the same amount of power at the market. Then you don't need a lot of externalities. If where that power balance happens there, then you actually have to have some form of structures that put some checks and balances. The obvious one is obviously perishability. If you and I talk about the price of a glass of milk, a tomato, or my background, or a bushel of wheat, and if we don't agree about the price today, let's come back in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Well, that glass of milk is lost a lot of value. The tomato might hang in there, but it's not as sweet as it was. Bushel of wheat is fine. So you don't need, depending on the ag product, people want to take a broad brush and paint all agricultural markets the same, and that simply doesn't work. And I've added a fourth to that, and it comes from our colleague, our former colleague now, Ed Fast, who probably negotiated the most trade agreements around the world. And he said the other situation is the international trading scenario.
Yeah.
That also impacts ag markets. And obviously we're seeing that now, potentially with dairy, we're seeing with greenhouse and other as the ag markets and the politicians around the world interfere.
Well, even when you're negotiating all these trade deals, which are increasingly complex, and rightfully so, as you just pointed out, agriculture is usually one of the sticking points in a lot of these discussions. And every country seems to have their list of kind of protected products, if you will, or sensitive items, whatever you want to call it.
They're sacred cows. Every government has their sacred cows.
And they kind of, put that to the side. Hey, this is not being touched over here. It usually has to do with agriculture in many cases.
That's right.
Because of the complexities and the fact that you want to be able to feed your population, and certain industries need to keep going.
I marvel. I've probably flown into the city of Sacramento, California 40 times because the processing tomato industry, that's one of the major homes for it. And as you come into that airport, you fly over rice fields. You wouldn't think it would make a lot of economic sense to grow rice in the desert state of California. And yet, as you come into Sacramento, California, you fly over rice fields. And so there's a lot of government policy behind encouraging rice production in the desert state of California. Good point. Yeah.
All right, Dave, we're pretty much out of time, but the guests always get the last word. You can talk about whatever you want. The floor is yours.
Wow, I come from, as you know, the most southerly part of Canada. And so what people often fail to understand is that 1/3 of the US population lives north of me. I have many American friends, particularly in the agri-food sector, that I've spent some time on before having the honor and privilege of representing Chatham-Kent-Leamington. Our area is an agricultural powerhouse. The diversity of what we can produce here. My American friends say, someday I'll come up to Canada and see you. I said, no, you won't. You'll come down to Canada to see me because 1/3 of the population lives north, and I live on the 42nd parallel, which is the boundary between California and Oregon. And so I'll give a shout out to my region that grows fruits and vegetables that people don't often associate with Canadian production. The second largest greenhouse production area in the world comes from our part of the world. As agricultural entrepreneurs, which we have not only in my riding, but all across Canada. They are a powerhouse. They should be a major driver, and our governments should be encouraging the development and innovation of that sector.
Well said.
Thank you, sir.
Dave Epp, Member of Parliament for Chatham-Kent, Leamington, thank you for your time.
Appreciate the honor.
Always keep wearing those ties. And thank you for your time as well. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share this program. Tell your friends. They can download it on platforms like CastBox, iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify. You name it, it is out there. We will have new content for you every single Tuesday, even throughout the summer. So until next week, remember, low taxes, less government, more freedom. That's the blueprint.